President Trump posted a headline last week from the Washington Examiner calling him the, quote, most important president in maybe 100 years. Okay, but important doesn't mean good. Like, for example, it's important to get that weird mole checked out.
That's as good as it gets on late night TV. How's Joe Biden's mole doing? I think no, that's his head. Sorry, that's his entire head. Not just a mole that needs to be removed. Hang on now. Go like this. Ah, yes. Well, a very happy hump day to all of you. It is Wednesday in America. What day is it where you are? We have a great many moving parts today, as you might expect. The big kerfuffle yesterday over the Vanity Fair article that, for some inexplicable reason, the Trump White House allowed Vanity Fair under the tent and to latch on to the White House Chief of Staff, Suzie Wiles, who gets great reviews everywhere you look. But she did 11 interviews, apparently, with Vanity Fair, some of which lasted an hour each, not collectively, but an hour each. And then, for some reason, people were surprised that Vanity Fair did a hit piece, a hatchet job on the White House Chief of Staff, who's a woman, perhaps the most powerful woman in Washington. She's one of those smart White House Chief of Staff people, unlike Joe Biden. Can anybody name a Joe Biden White House Chief of Staff? Because, they were all very severely mentally impaired. Severely mentally impaired Democrats. They're smids. And surprise, I wasn't surprised that they had a hit job done on them. Shocking though that may seem. Isn't that amazing? Also, the President of the United States, Donald John Trump, tonight will be delivering an address to the nation from the White House in the 9 p.m. hour, right? And that means, 9 p.m. And it may not start exactly at 9:01:30. That's usually when the White House addresses start. If it's 9 p.m., you give it 1 minute and 30 seconds for the anchorman to lead in. So it starts at 9:01 and 30 seconds. But it may start a little beyond that. And the president, I think, has a lot to get off his chest. And whatever's in the teleprompter will provide a nice framework. But I suspect that the president will then riff here and there on issues that matter to him. And he's going to cover everything from Joe Biden being horrible and awful and terrible and the mess that he left him on the economy and the open border and the gangs and the illegal aliens. And he'll talk about blowing up drug-running boats out of Venezuela, and he'll talk about everything, the economy and prices and Biden. And I expect it will be, earlier today I was predicting a 55-minute speech. I'm expecting a 55-minute speech, I think. And then I was communicating with the people at Newsmax TV, saying, hey, the President Trump, my TV show there is 10 p.m., right? And I said, the president is speaking at 9 p.m. I'm guessing that it's going to be just roll right into a panel discussion, and that's going to go till 11 p.m. And no, come in and we're gonna act like there's no speech going on at all. We're gonna pretend that it's an average day. So we've got that going on because that's a big deal. It's kind of a big deal, I've got to say, and we have that. Yes, sir. Big stuff. We have a lot going inside the government. We have a lot going on outside the government. And today is Wednesday, so it is hump day in the Clinton household. That can never be a good thing. And it's mailbag day here on the Chris Plante Show. It's mailbag day because it's Wednesday. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to hit the microphone with my mailbag questions there. That question. This is fun. This is one that came in by way of the U.S. mail, and I like this. I'm looking forward to the mailbag today because there's a lot going on. And I got to tell you, I did my every Wednesday morning. I call in to WLS, my radio station in Chicago, Illinois. station I grew up with, station I'm on today, and that's great fun. And they had a crazy story they were talking about when I was on hold waiting for my great guys at WLS in Chicago. In Illinois, they had, what was it, a 1 week, a 7-day deer hunting season. 7-day deer hunting season in the state of Illinois. And you'd think, well, in Illinois, didn't they ban guns and all that stuff? Well, it's a 7-day deer hunting season, and they killed hunters, killed more than 81,000 deer. More than 81,000 deer have been hunted and killed in the state of Illinois in 7 days. In 7 days. That's some good shooting. These whoever these people are, they should go to Chicago and teach the kids to shoot. Fewer stray bullets flying around Chicago would be good. Yeah, over 81,000 deer harvested by Illinois hunters during 2025 firearm deer season, because they have the firearm, the guns deer season. Then they have bow hunting. Yeah, bow hunting season too. And then also just chase after them with a big pointed stick season, which is much harder. They do more of that in Brentwood, California. Apparently in Brentwood, there's a lot of that going on. And we've got updates for you on all the big stories on Brown University and in Rhode Island. And did you see that a Jewish professor at MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Gesundheit, at MIT, he went to his home and where he was shot to death. He was shot a bunch of times, but he didn't die right away. They took him to the hospital, and he was still alive, and he died in the hospital later. Jewish college professor, MIT, and he was specializing in nuclear things. He did work, I saw reported, with the Pentagon and nuclear things. Jewish professor, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. He went home. It's about a 1-hour drive from where the mass shooting was at Brown University, but that's not important. We got a lot of crazy stuff going on in the country these days, and it's not just, the rich sons of rich Hollywood directors and producers. There's a lot of crazy, and I blame the Democrats, as you might expect me to blame the Democrats, because the Democrats have earned so much blame. Boy, have they earned a lot of blame. So we've got big news going on. We've got all kinds of stuff going on all over the place. We really do. And the Democrats provide me with way too much of it. There's also I know everybody tracks Dan Bongino, now at the FBI, Deputy Director of the FBI, and some news breaking about Dan Bongino that I want to share with you today as well. Really remarkable things going on everywhere you look. And Bondi Beach in Sydney, Australia. That's, what's his name? Naveed Akram, charged with 15 counts of murder and shooting a whole bunch more people, all because they're Jewish. And the Democrat Party has jumped on the jihad bandwagon. They're an anti-Semitic party. The Democrat Party is. Their Jews hate the Jews. It's a self-loathing Democrat Party Jewish thing that most normal people wouldn't understand. But we've got a great deal going on various fronts today, and I will be sharing them with you. And as the day progresses, since I cover half the workday here from 9 a.m. to noon Eastern time, that's half the workday on the East Coast for sure. Then everybody goes to martini lunches and cheating on their wives and, the usual Democrat Party stuff. Yes, man. And also Hanukkah is underway. There was a Hanukkah celebration at the Trump White House last night. And Mark Levin hails President Trump as the first Jewish president. Mark Levin at the Hanukkah reception at the White House. Big stuff. Big things going on. And again, as the first Jewish president, and his daughter converted to Judaism, his grandchildren are Jewish. He's brought peace between 3 Arab nations and Israel. He had a village in Israel named for him, Trump has. And, Joe Biden, no, they might name a village after him in Iran, but and Barack Hussein Obama, they should name a village after him in Iran, too. But back here in Brooklyn, New York, in Crown Heights, New York City, 2 anti-Semitic attacks in 24 hours. target Jews in Crown Heights and the New York City subway. I don't think the New York City subway is as much fun as it used to be, you know. Clang, clang, clang went the trolley, you know. And I know that wasn't the New York City subway, but that's not important now. A Jewish man wounded in Crown Heights stabbing. And the guy, he's a black guy. He walked out, he's wearing, what is that jacket? Like some kind of, wasn't a gang jacket or a biker jacket, but it was a very loud jacket. And he walked up to the guy and used anti-Jewish slurs to smear the guy. And then he stabbed him, of course, because he wanted to murder him, because the Democrat Party, they should be wearing armbands, and they should always have brown shirts, don't you think? They shouldn't wear white business shirts with a point collar. I think they should be wearing brown shirts everywhere they go, the Democrat Party. Amazing stuff. And the headline, I mentioned it earlier, but here's the headline. MIT, the MIT professor, head of nuclear science, shot dead at home after neighbors hear the door being kicked in and 3 bangs. They heard the door being kicked in. And why are they kicking in the door of a Jewish MIT professor who's that of nuclear science? And they kick in his door and shot him 3 times. And then they fled, and he didn't die, as I said, right away. He was taken to the hospital, and he died at the hospital later. It's a murder. It might be an assassination. Was it anti-Semitism, as the Democrats have made so popular across the United States of America? Isn't that something? Shot in his Brookline, Mass home. That's short for Massachusetts, you know, like that. Yes, sir. And, you know, I told you yesterday, maybe even day before yesterday, that the Reiner family had gone over to Conan O'Brien's house for a Christmas party. I bet they called it a holiday party, though. And whenever, I'm going to call it a Christmas party. In fact, the headline here, the Hollywood Reporter, now that I mention it, said Conan O'Brien threw a holiday party. See, it wasn't a Christmas party. To forget a bad year. You know, that's because Trump. See, that's so Trump derangement syndrome. They had such a bad year. Why would they have a bad year? It's, President Trump was inaugurated on January 20th, and leftists have had a bad year, and they haven't killed nearly enough Jews yet. They got to set up rail spurs and camps before they really go to work. Yeah, Conan O'Brien threw a holiday party to forget a bad year. Then Nick Reiner arrived. See, there you have it. That's and he arrived, and he was bad news for sure. Got to say. Also, Democrats are, again, very severely mentally impaired. Severely mentally impaired Democrats. SMID, S-M-I-D, severely mentally impaired Democrats. The SMIDs, and, honestly, the son of the murderer of his parents, he's a severely mentally ill Democrat, isn't he? He's a SMID, just another SMID. We've got that. But they're proving that there are SMIDs in Boston, Massachusetts, too, because it turns out that the anniversary of the Boston Tea Party, was observed by Democrats in Boston, Mass. They went down to the harbor and did they dump tea into the water? No, they dumped ice blocks and ice cubes because it's an anti-ice protest. They shouldn't be allowed to drive cars. They definitely shouldn't be allowed to own firearms. They shouldn't be allowed to fly commercial because they're severely mentally ill Democrats everywhere. Just amazing. Also, this is a fun story. ABC fake news. George Snuffleupagus. Hunter Biden disbarred in Connecticut. Disbarred, does that mean he can't go into a bar? Oh, no, he can still go into bars. Hunter Biden disbarred in Connecticut after complaints about gun, tax convictions. Oh, no. Come on, one gun conviction and one tax evasion conviction, and suddenly you're not a lawyer in Connecticut anymore? I wonder if he's bar certified in any other states where he could still be disbarred. Crackhead Hunter. Just amazing stuff. Wah, wah, wah. We are at 888-630-9625. What's your favorite story of the day? 888-630-9625. right, Michael, let us go to the telephones and talk to the great American people about the magnificent issues of our day. Strange a time though this may be. And Rob Reiner, that whole Rob Reiner thing, I got to tell you, it's crazy. We live in a crazy country, and everywhere you look, it's another Democrat, isn't it? Yes, it is. All right, let's go to the telephones, Michael. Let's go to Bill, calling from Columbia, Maryland. William, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Good morning, Chris. It's so great to be on. So
Welcome.
I was telling your call screener, I have recovered from alcoholism. I'm in my 22nd year.
Uh-huh.
And I've been saying for a long time, I think Trump has an alcoholic personality. Now, I had an alcoholic personality before I ever picked up my first drink, and I still have an alcoholic personality, even though I haven't had a drink in almost 22 years.
Wow. But
that being said, the outstanding characteristic of alcoholics is defiance. And I'm a type A personality, so I'm one of these guys, I'll do more before breakfast than most people do all day. And that's certainly Trump, and he's certainly defiant. You know, he's somebody, I don't even consider him a Republican. Mm-hmm. I mean, he created his own party because I'm an independent. You know, he definitely defies the system. So I could go on and on about alcoholic personalities, but I think it's a good thing that he has that personality, and it's amazing that he didn't succumb like his brother did. Unfortunately, his brother did. And he's talked about his brother succumbing to addiction. And so I think that the chief of staff was right on the mark when she compared Trump to her father, Pat Summerall, who apparently also had an alcoholism.
Right, exactly right. And most families do. At least I come from a largely Irish family, so then it's a guarantee. You know, it's a lock. You got that going, and that's been part of the world since I was a tiny kid. Now, President Trump did put out a statement on this yesterday afternoon, which I have right in front of me, Bill, and I want to read it for you. And Suzie Wiles, the White House chief of staff, she also put out a statement on this article in Vanity Fair. And Bill, I don't understand why anybody's surprised that this is a hit piece, right? That's the only part that I'm confused by. How did they not expect Vanity Fair to do a smear job on Trump's White House chief of staff? Isn't that obvious, Bill?
Well, I think Trump has been playing the media for years, and you know, he probably told her to go ahead and say whatever she wanted to say, and they're going to spin it to his advantage because every time the media thinks they got him, it always
blows up in their face. I've got his response coming up. Yes, and it's mailbag day, and Hillary Clinton waking up face down in a pool of her own dried vomit on a linoleum kitchen floor in one of their many multi-million-dollar mansions. She's got to clear out because for Bill Clinton, you know, it's hump day. That's a fact check. Now, I've got, you may or may not have seen one of the stories that I want to get to today about Dan Bongino, because there's news about Dan Bongino. It's in the New York Times. And media, they have three sources. They got three. Two were not enough. They had to go get three sources on that, and that's remarkable stuff. But I do want to get to that sooner rather than later. However, there's other stuff. I was just talking about President Trump, right, and the that Suzie Wiles hit piece in Vanity Fair magazine, which is a big deal. It's kind of a big deal, and why the Trump White House allowed these Vanity Fair people in under the tent, I don't know, but let's go to what President Trump said, because one of the big stories out of, and there are a number of them because it's all hit piece all the time with the phony, baloney, corrupt Democrat Party front group media, which would include, certainly not limited to Vanity Fair magazine, but would certainly include Vanity Fair magazine. And I've got to say, the alcoholic's personality, it's funny, when we heard this yesterday, my best girl said right away, hasn't Trump said that about himself in the past? I mean, isn't that not shocking? And, you know, they just strip it off figuring nobody remembers anything that was said more than 20 minutes ago. And they say, oh, yeah, nobody's ever heard this before, but everybody's heard this before. The headline in the New York Post, Trump stands by Chief of Staff Suzie Wiles after bombshell Vanity Fair article. And the interviews, multiple interviews, apparently 11 interviews she did with Vanity Fair. And the headline, Trump stands by Chief of Staff Suzie Wiles after bombshell Vanity Fair interviews, plural, admits he has, quote, alcoholic personality. What's this? President Trump defended White House Chief of Staff Suzie Wiles in an exclusive interview with the New York Post on Tuesday, saying he was right to tell Vanity Fair she was right to tell Vanity Fair he has a, quote, alcoholic's personality, and that he has, end quote, and that he has confidence in Wiles to continue in her role. In an afternoon phone call, Trump said he wasn't offended by his subordinate's choice of words. No, she meant that you see, this is President Trump now, says, no, she meant that you see, I don't drink alcohol, so everybody knows that, but I've often said that if I did, I'd have a very good chance of being an alcoholic. I have said that many times about myself. I do, he said. It's a very possessive personality, Trump said, and a teetotaler who has frequently cited the 1981 death of his older brother Fred at the age of 42 of an alcohol-induced heart attack at the age of 42 as the main impetus for his abstinence. And he said that, and President Trump went on to say, I've said that many times about myself. I'm fortunate. I'm not a drinker. If I did, I could very well, because I've said that. What's the word? Not possessive, and addictive type personality. Oh, I've said it many times before. And my best girl remembered it right away. But Vanity Fair didn't, and the New York Times didn't, and the Washington Post didn't, and CNN didn't. They should all hire my best girl at $1 million each, and she could tell them what they're missing. In the profile in Vanity Fair, Suzie Wiles, the daughter of late NFL player and broadcaster Pat Summerall, famous sports broadcaster, who underwent his own public struggles with the bottle, told author Chris Whipple, a very well-known left-wing, anti-Trump, anti-Republican Democrat activist, and why they agreed. Now, I'm guessing President Trump had to give the green light on this for his chief of staff to do 11 interviews, some of which went on for at least an hour each, with Vanity Fair magazine, knowing they're going to do a hit piece. And then they did a hit piece. And then President Trump, he's standing by her, which is appropriate, of course, and it's typical of President Trump to stand by her as well. So they told the author, Chris Whipple, that high-functioning alcoholics, or alcoholics in general, their personalities are exaggerated when they drink. Then the president has an alcoholic's personality. That's the phrase that she used, because he operates with a view that there's nothing he can't do. Nothing he can't do. It's like, you're on the roof of the house and, I'm a golden god and there's nothing I can't do because you're drunk out of your brains and you leap off the roof into the swimming pool, because that's part of, maybe that's just being drunk. That's not so much a personality thing. So over the course of 11 conversations this year with Vanity Fair magazine, Suzie Wiles also said Vice President J.D. Vance was, quote, a conspiracy theorist for a decade, and that, end quote, and that Attorney General Pam Bondi whiffed. That's the whole, just one word in quotation marks. That should always get your antenna up when there's just one word, no complete sentence or complete thought in quotation marks, then they're being manipulated. Pam Bondi whiffed in her handling of files related to notorious pedophile Jeffrey Epstein, who gave almost all of his political money to Democrats, hung out with Bill Clinton endlessly, and there were no surveillance cameras at his suicide watch jail cell in New York. Is that right? Yeah, that's right. President Trump said, "I didn't read it," meaning the Vanity Fair magazine article. "But I don't read Vanity Fair," he said. "But she's done a fantastic job," Trump said on Tuesday when asked about the report by Whipple in Vanity Fair. Mr. Whipple, best known for his 2017 book, The Gatekeepers, about White House chiefs of staff. He said, "I think from what I hear, the facts were wrong, and it was a very misguided interview, purposely misguided." Asked if he had full confidence in Suzie Wiles, his chief of staff, the president said, "Oh, she's fantastic." That sounds pretty good. He said he thought Whipple, the typist for the Democrat Party, may have deceived Wiles regarding his focus. No, come on. What are the odds? I think that's about 100% probability on that. Said, "Yeah, deceived," President Trump said. "Yeah, deceived." And he didn't have great access, a couple of very short interviews, and Suzie generally doesn't do interviews. Well, 11 interviews were done, and they said some of them went on for an hour. If anybody knows the interviewer, and if they know Vanity Fair is it's lost its way, President Trump said. It's also lost its readers, as you know. "No, she's fantastic," President Trump said. And she is, let me say this, I've been around this town for a while now. There are some White House chiefs of staff that are pretty great, and they become famous and legendary, and it's a very powerful position in Washington, particularly if the person is good at it. Again, I don't think anybody could name a Joe Biden White House chief of staff. For the most part, I think a Barack Obama White House chief of staff, nobody could name either. But Suzie Wiles is very respected in Washington, D.C., and she, according to all, and I've actually never met her in person, but I know a lot of people that know her and have worked directly for her and worked in the Trump White House and so on. And every report I get is positive about Suzie Wiles, just smart, like, razor smart. And she, when she cracks the whip, it's a bullwhip, and she runs a tight ship. She controls the situation. She controls the agenda. She controls the timing of everything. And this, I didn't learn this until earlier this week. She's apparently, I'm told reliably, very funny. Very funny. And for me, that goes a long way, of course. You can be very smart. You can be in politics. But being able to make things funny at the same time, that's key. That's good stuff. So she's pretty great. And also the vice president responded a little bit to this because he was asked about it naturally, because that's how that goes. Amazing stuff. We also got James Carville, the Democrat. You never know what you'll turn up when you run a $100 bill through a trailer park. You might turn up James Carville, as it turns out. And we've got some hymn that I want to share with you. And health care. What are we going to do to undo Obamacare, which destroyed the greatest health care system in the history of humankind, the American health care system? We've got that. I'm telling you. But we've got also, I think you have the J.D. Vance soundbite when he was asked about this, because J.D. Vance was doing an event, and he was like, "Oh, hey, Suzie Wiles, the White House chief of staff, said that you've been a conspiracy theorist for 10 years. That's a decade for Democrats trying to follow along at home. That's a tenth of a century." See how that's got to explain this stuff, though. Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance, when he was asked about Suzie Wiles on the Vanity Fair hit piece.
"Sometimes I am a conspiracy theorist, but I only believe in the conspiracy theories that are true. And Suzie Wiles, we have our disagreements. We agree on much more than we disagree, but I've never seen her be disloyal to the President of the United States, and that makes her the best White House chief of staff that I think the President could ask for. If any of us have learned a lesson from that Vanity Fair article, I hope that the lesson is we should be giving fewer interviews to mainstream media outlets."
Yeah, I think that probably is the correct lesson. The thing is, everybody knew that before Vanity Fair and this, Mr. Whipple came in. Everybody knew that, I'd like to think, but still somehow this 11 interviews with the White House Chief of Staff, and then don't be surprised when they excise 3 words here and 2 words there and turn it into, oh, see, we can spin this as being bad news for everybody, right? That's pretty wacky. Wacky doodle doo, I've got to tell you. And it's all about the Democrat Party and the abuses of the news media, the Fourth Estate. They know that our republic cannot function properly if the Fourth Estate has been corrupted. And so what did they do? Well, they got to work successfully corrupting the Fourth Estate, the American news media. Isn't that amazing? Yes, sir. Now, I've got I saw it this morning, and I thought, well, this could be real, and it could be a lot of bourgeois, but it turns out that it is real. The headline in the New York Times, FBI Director Kash Patel, eager for spotlight, casts aside caution in social media posts. That's their big thing, the social media posts, right? And the New York Times, Kash Patel's impulse to publicize the work of the Bureau under his leadership has revived questions about his competence and his future in the administration. This is they're trying to do a hit piece. It's the New York Times on Kash Patel. And also, Dan Bongino comes into this because a short time later in the New York Times piece, there is news on Dan Bongino. And I know everybody listening here knows Dan Bongino. And Dan Bongino used to come on most of these stations right after my show at noon Eastern Time and 3 hours. Been taken over very capably by Vince Colonnese, our great friend here in Washington. Vince Colonnese, who's wonderful and a great guy and a great American and a great talk show host. And wonderful, wonderful. But Mediaite, the left-wingers at Mediaite, they went to the New York Times, which they have to read every morning. It's their Bible or their Koran, really. It's more like their Koran. But the clowns at Mediaite, with their headline, Dan Bongino clearing out his office in preparation for FBI exit. I'm sorry, what's this? New York Times. See, they don't put that's not their headline because they're going after the director. And when they heard that Dan Bongino is planning on leaving the FBI, the Justice Department, the Trump administration soon, they said, oh, well, screw that. Let's go after the Kash Patel and the FBI director and try to get him and destroy the world, because that's what the New York Times is here for. But this is a big deal. Dan Bongino clearing out his desk in preparation for FBI exit, according to the New York Times. Deputy FBI Director Dan Bongino is reportedly already clearing out his office ahead of an imminent departure from the Bureau, meaning the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, and a potential return to the mega media circuit, the New York Times has reported. Bongino has told associates he could leave, quote, as soon as this week or as late as mid-January, end quote. People familiar with his plans told the New York Times on Wednesday. That's what they told the New York Times on Wednesday. He has not yet made a formal announcement. To back the claims, however, the newspaper, the New York Times, sources further revealed that Bongino has begun shipping office knickknacks and other personal belongings back to Florida, where he plans to resume his broadcasting career in time for the 2026 midterm elections. Now, my understanding is that Dan will come back to a bigger, better podcast, but not to a 3-hour-a-day call-in radio show. So that's what we're getting, and that is not the New York Times. I didn't hear that from Dan Bongino, but that's what's bouncing around. Sources told Fox News Digital that Bongino had not made a final decision and denied his office was empty. Didn't say it was empty, said he was emptying stuff out, but did add that he was expected to declare his intentions in the coming weeks. So Dan Bongino, as soon as this week, may leave the FBI. That's kind of a big deal, a big development. I've got a bit more on that coming up today as well. And I've got more. I'm going to bring you more from the New York Times on Dan Bongino leaving the FBI. Got the pipe bombers, crackdown on crime, gangs, fighting crime, fighting for truth, justice, and the American way. Let's go to the telephones, Michael. Let's go to Donna, calling from Frederick, Maryland. Oh, Donna, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Good morning, Chris. I hope you're having a good week. What a news cycle this is. And it brings me to, after kind of poking around and doing some of my own research, it seems to me that apparently, and I don't know if this is fake MAGA delivering this information, also known as FAGA, which is sort of humorous by itself, but, they're saying, some of what I've read indicates that perhaps Suzie Wiles worked under the Bush administration. So there's sort of this Rhino versus MAGA thing going on with respect to her. And so I'm looking at this with side eye, wondering why, as you mentioned, President Trump would allow her to do this media blitz. And I think it's all connected somehow, and eventually the truth will come out, wherever that leads us. Also, with respect to Dan, it's not like Dan to just abandon a post in the middle of a very important time. Perhaps there's more to that story as well. It's just my instinct speaking. You've taught me well, Chris. I look at everything very thoroughly and try to discern my own thoughts about it, and I just wanted to share it with you.
Well, very good. Thank you, Don. Yeah, don't become cynical, but always be skeptical. And I got to tell you, since you brought up Dan again, I want to talk about the story about Dan Bongino again. And, he's going to be back on the air soon. He'll be able to say whatever he wants.